thought of death has a very vital role to play in shaking us from our habits, from our quotidian assumptions, from the waste of time that we constantly engage with normally. The thought of death has a role to play in clearing up what life might be about for us. And that's why it's very important. Now, nowadays we don't put skulls on the desk, but we do this, right? We do this. We look at these things. And I think we're trying to get back in touch with some of the emotions that the skull is good at eliciting. But again, let me come back to this point. The news doesn't do this for us. It doesn't tie up, right? It presents us with a ghoulish event. It doesn't tell us the one thing that we could draw from the ghoulish event. So it's very unresolved. We're constantly being shown very unresolved things, and our emotions are therefore extremely unresolved and perturbed. Look, ultimately, a lot of what the news spends its time doing is making us frightened of everything. The one thing it never tells us is, it's okay, you will survive, you can be resilient. We're afraid of everything. Bird flu, this flu, swine flu, UFOs, spies, etc. There's always something new to be terrified about. Look, a very basic point is, the news picks out the anomalous events, the murders, the disasters, the tragedies, right? And because we're looking at the news all the time, an anomalous event becomes the normal. Right? It becomes the norm. And that explains why when your car breaks down on a Saturday night somewhere in a remote place and you've got to go and seek help from a stranger, you know what's going to happen. You're going to talk to a stranger and they will chop you up into small pieces and put you in the trunk. And the reason you know this is that you are a consumer of the news. And therefore you know that everybody is a pervert or a paedophile or a murderer or a crazy guy. And that's what we know. And of course, they're not. And we come to a stunning realization. We go, I spoke to a stranger and they were quite nice. Of course they were quite nice. Everybody's quite nice, right? Apart from 0.0001%. But that 0.01% is the normal. Those are the people we hear about all the time. So we have a fundamentally distorted picture of the United States. Right? What is the United States? A country of crazies where everybody's killing everybody else. That's what we know in Europe because we've read the papers, So in other words, we are getting, it is in the power of the news to give us that feeling, which is so important, which is what kind of country do I live in, right? Most of us, we only have a very narrow circle of friends, acquaintances, work colleagues, right, who are helping to give us a face-to-face sense of what it means to live in the United States now. Most of our information about what it means to live in this country now is fed to us by the news. So we have surrendered a vital thing to the news, or to the news machine, which is our sense of our own nation. And that's a striking surrender. And of course, the picture that comes back is, deeply, deeply worrying. There's one area of hope, and that concerns, the news is very pessimistic and dark in many, many areas, apart from the area of medical science. If you follow the news is the progeny of the Enlightenment, and like science, which got going at the same time, the two track one another all the time. And the news is constantly bringing us fantastic news from those guys at MIT and other research laboratories, John Hopkins, etc., and lots of new developments, that if you have an aspirin every night, you won't have a stroke, or if you eat walnuts, you won't get Alzheimer's, or if you wear a special kind of sock, you won't die young, or if you this, lots of things, whatever it is. There's always some new discovery, something over the hill. And the bad news, guys, is that we're going to die. Of course we're going to die, and we're not going to die in some conflagration when the airliner crashes. We're going to die a very ordinary death, right? Our octogenarian hearts will patiently give out one night, and that's the way it is for most people. But the news doesn't reconcile us to this. It's catapulting us between terror of extreme events and hope of kind of millennial promises of eternal life. So it's always, swinging us between hope and despair. It does this in politics, of course, as well. This guy, he's going to save everything, and then no, he hasn't. He's a most useless guy, etc. So fury, hope and fury, constantly, the constant things that drive the news machine. It's very, very exhausting. At least the guys who the news replaced broke the bad news to us gently. They said, look, it's going to come to an end. It's very sad. Get ready for it. Think about it a lot. They were gentle. I speak to you as a secular Jew, but they were gentle with this stuff. But the news doesn't do this service. Catapults us between hope and despair constantly. Look, something else the news drives us crazy with, and that is celebrities. You just had the Oscars, etc. And if you talk to sensible, clever, intelligent people and say to them, "What's wrong with the world now?" A lot of the time they'll say, well, we just live in a celebrity culture, don't we? Stupid celebrities everywhere, influencing the young in horrible ways. Very easy to despair about this. And, you say, really? Is that really the case? And they go, yeah, they're everywhere. They're doing this kind of thing, right? And you despair, okay? So serious people think, okay, celebrity news is terrible. And now my line on celebrity news is a bit different. I think that it's very, very important for a country to have celebrities, okay? Celebrities are vital in terms of guiding the nation. Enforcing morals and manners, guiding people as to how to behave, right? The thing is, and every society has had celebrities or role models. A role model is very important. You cannot have a society without role models. The problem was a twofold problem. I think the problem starts at the top of society, right? Very serious people don't believe in celebrities because they have a very individualistic, self-created sense. Me, I would be guided by a celebrity. No, I make up my own mind. I don't have role models. I just do it myself, right? So that's the kind of standard, elite view, right? And then, of course, the business of anointing celebrities passes on to the lowest common denominator. And that's why we get our friend here. So it's very important not to do away with celebrity, but to get the right sort of celebrity, right? This is what we need. We need the right sort of celebrity. If we get better celebrities, the nation will go better. But because serious people don't believe in the job of celebrity, they don't even see it as a need. Look, let me show you how things might go a little bit. Recently, an actress called Natalie Portman took her child to the park. And that's very, very useful indeed, because those of you who've had children or no children, it's really boring to go to the park with a child. So boring. But it's good, and you do it, and da. Okay, it goes on and on. Very, very boring. It's very nice as you're taking your child to the park to think, well, Natalie was there. Yeah, she was there. She did a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, she was with her kid. I'm kind of doing what a Hollywood actress is doing. So that's kind of cool, right? The light of glamour has momentarily shone on an ordinary moment of everyday life. That's really important because we need glamour. Glamour is not a bad thing. We need things to be made glamorous. It's just we need the right things to be made glamorous. So here's Saint Natalie, patron saint of taking your kid to the park. Very important thing. And, these guys who came before knew it as well. They had saints for all sorts of things. Saint for this, saint for that. They understood that a well-functioning society needs role models. We're very confused about this. We need to clear up and get a little more optimistic. It could go better than it's going now. Look, something else the news does to us, and it tends to do it to us on the weekend, right? So on the weekend, it's time for the slower bits of news, the Sunday supplements, the colour supplements, the blogs, etc. And sometimes, we'll go out and we'll go and buy the Sunday papers, big fat thing, and we'll sit down on the sofa and the birds are chirping outside, etc. And, in the olden days, they still do it sometimes. On the news, they sometimes say, viewers beware, there's essentially strobe lighting coming up, so beware of strobe lighting. There should be these kind of warnings over those innocent piles of papers we call the Sunday papers. And what they should be flashing is envy alert, right? But they don't, because the news very frequently does not warn us. Now, what do I mean by envy alert? We live in very mobile, meritocratic, on a good day, societies where people are capable of unbelievable transformations of their origins, from their origins. Of course, it doesn't happen very often, but it does happen enough to not enable us to sleep that well at night. And there are stories all the time out there of people who used to be this and have now become that. People who used to be, a boring accountant and they then started to, make a movie, or they were a failing movie star and they set up some boutique hotels and then were bought by the thing, or they had a garage and then they, etc. And these stories are constantly all around and they drive us nuts, because all the time we're there on a Sunday morning and we're thinking, I am a loser, because I have not done anything with my life. And this guy on the screen, his name is Elon Musk. And the real problem with Elon Musk is that he's 46. Now, for a long time, it doesn't matter how old, when you're younger, it doesn't matter how old people are who've achieved things, because you always think, well, I've got some time. But the problem is I'm 44 now, and Elon Musk is 46. And the problem is he started eBay or something, and then he had PayPal, and he's worth $17 billion. And then he had Tesla, and now he wants to send men to the moon. No, Mars. And this is his wife. So it's just going swimmingly. It's going swimmingly for him. He is just, I'm so happy for him, but no, I'm not. I'm going insane with bitterness and jealousy and craziness. And that's when my partner says, everything okay? I go, yes, of course it is. And I'm going crazy, and I'm antsy, and at lunch I don't really want to communicate, and it's all very fraught. And the truth that I can't quite face is I'm jealous of Elon Musk, and it seems insane. How could that be? And the article about Elon Musk was really nice. It was showing us Elon Musk's new home, and it was showing us how he's recently started to cook pasta himself. So charming, so sweet, such a nice thing. So the news often informs these delightful little details. We need help. Okay, we need help with envy. It is rife. The news and envy are bound together like ivy around a statue. The two are so embedded. We need help. Now look, I'm not down on envy, although society tends to be, because we still have a Judeo-Christian background that says envy is bad. Envy is not bad, it's just terribly confused. Envy is a signal, a guide to something that you need to advance your life, okay? But it's confused, it's a foggy thing. We need to get better at interpreting our envy. In every envious attack, I think most of us have an envious attack 5 times a day, maybe more. We need to keep an envy diary where we write down each attack and then study it later. What were its themes? What did we learn? What could we learn? It's a huge opportunity for learning. Every envious attack is an opportunity for learning and sharpening it because it's diffuse. So, if I start to analyze, okay, I'm envious of Elon Musk. I'm going to face up to that. Now I'm going to analyze it. Now, do I want to start PayPal, or the next PayPal, or the next eBay? Actually, no, not really. Do I want to send men to Mars or what thing? Or am I interested in electric cars? Or is this lady so special? No, actually, that's not the point. But if I really analyze it, I really realize that what I envy in this man is his courage. Because again and again and again, he came up with these ideas that sounded crazy, and no one believed him for up to sort of 10 years. And he stuck with it. With everyone telling him, you're crazy, you're an idiot, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your money, you're wasting your life. He stuck with it, and the bet paid off. So he's a saint of a certain vision of courage, and that's very interesting, and that's what I'm after in him. So, look, I went on too long, but really, what this is all about is getting better at focusing on envy, realizing that the news does this to us constantly, hourly, getting better at using it. Now, look, something else. Serious news organizations, when they're looking at unserious news organizations, tend to characterize the unserious news organizations as biased. Right? So what's the most biased news source in the United States? Everybody knows Fox News, a bad source of news. And no one in Brooklyn looks at Fox News. It's horrible. Fox News is very, very bad. And so what do we like? What kind of news do we like as sophisticated people in Brooklyn? Pretty crazy. It's also completely wrong and patronizing, because the dominant assumption, let's face it, most of us are so good, and we've been good since we were 3 or 4 years old, at picking up on a biased source of information. When your parents were telling you, come and sit down now, and you've got to eat that steak because it's good for you, or that fish, and you go, no, I'm not going to eat that. And we are very good at resisting stories that we don't like, right? We are experts in batting back bias. We're good at this stuff. It's a second nature. And meanwhile, the population at large is going insane and crazy. And every now and then you get an explosion, right? People can't take it anymore. Right? And they start waving placards around. And the terrible problem with this is that this is the result of news, right? Because this is the result of people who have been driven crazy with the indignity of the current economic situation. They're furious, they want to do something, and they have no idea what, other than simply say, let's sort it out. And that's unfortunately a really bad place to be in, because the police show up a few weeks later with water cannons, and off it goes, and it dies. You need, in order to change the world, not just passion, but good ideas. And this economic news has a huge role to play in not providing us with the ideas that are going to get these guys to have a fair chance at changing something. So we've got a fatal weakness, partly because of a curious institutional silence or a kind of pedagogical inhibition at the very top in the most serious news organizations. And this is, as I say, pretty fatal. It's amazing when we're in this city. The New York Times, lovely, wonderful institution. All the news that's fit to print. Really? All the news? You've really checked it out, have you? All the news. You've got to check out all the news that's fit to print, and you've printed it. Oh, that's absolutely marvelous. So, it's 2006, and there you are in the New York Times building, and you've printed all the news that's fit to print. Oh, anything going on in the banks? Anything at all? Anything strange about their capital reserves and their way? No, it's fine. Okay, fine, really. All the news that's fit to print. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, nonsense. It's one of the most asinine strap lines ever. It is dangerous not just for the New York Times, but for humanity, because if you have a world in which people expect that esteemed organizations like the BBC or the New York Times will have worked out reality, you're in danger. You constantly have to operate with the view that these guys don't really know very much. Okay, but oh my God, they make such a big deal. We know, and we're so important and thing, and the masthead and thing, and we're so, we the public, we think, well, they must know. So if it's fine, and they must know. They don't know. They've repeatedly shown us they don't know. They know some things, but they don't know everything. Look, at the end of the day, it's not the news. It's some news. It's some news masquerading as the news. But we can't expect anyone else to get out there and harvest all the important sources of information and simply dump it in our lap, leaving us to think about nothing, right? We can't. We have to think for ourselves. We have to keep our wits about us. And oddly and strangely, the news has a role to play, plays a role in rendering our minds soporific, in weakening our capacity and our ability to think for ourselves, which has and repeatedly had, in a recent American history, catastrophic results. And people say, oh yeah, but nowadays, everybody can start a Twitter account, so surely news just filters through. Oh yeah, really? Really? Okay, so great. So somebody, with a 50, audience with a Twitter account has come up with some, problem. There is still such a thing as mass media. And I think the mass media very cleverly uses things like Twitter and the existence of Twitter and Facebook to say, well, come on, it's a democracy and everyone can do it and it's not really us and don't blame us and everybody, you can be a journalist too, etc. Well, no, there is still such a thing as a news agenda. That hasn't gone away. And there is still a kind of monotheism around a lot of issues. And this leads to catastrophic errors. Now, one of the real causes for error is that the news keeps expecting that when there are bad things in the world, they are the result of some bad guys, right? And the bad guys can be pursued and locked up, and then the bad has gone away. If you open up the hearts of most journalists, you will see inscribed on it the word Watergate, right? Journalists still nowadays are in love with the Watergate paradigm. What is the Watergate paradigm? The Watergate paradigm is there's some bad stuff out there that is a secret. No one knows about it. It's behind a safe. It's in a computer somewhere. It's dark. And the journalist, who's kind of like James Bond, will go out there and get the secret, and through the secret will reveal it to the world and change the world and bring down the nasty, powerful people. Okay? Unfortunately, most of the things that are wrong with our world do not follow the Watergate paradigm in any shape or form. For a start, most things that are wrong with the world are public. We know them already. It's just that information is not being used properly. You don't need to go and break a code or get Edward Snowden to go inside a computer or anything. It's out there, but we're not looking at it. That's the problem. We're not analyzing. In other words, the problems are systemic. They are not to do with rotten apples. Of course, there's the odd rotten apple, but that's not really the dominant thing. So the news so frequently doesn't have the right filter. Look, moving on, just a very, very quick, obvious point. The news is based on the idea that what is new is important. Right? And the newer it is, the more important it might be, which is why we need to keep checking the news. So there might be something new that's happened that is very important, and it might have happened since the last bulletin. So we need to keep checking the news, to keep finding the important things that are going on in humanity. It's also very apparent, I hardly need to mention it, the very, very many things that have happened in humanity happened a long, long time ago. They have nothing to do with the last 5 minutes since the last bulletin. There's a lot of important stuff that is old. Okay, but the problem is the news can't see it because the news is committed to the idea that what is important is new. And so if we keep following the narrative of the news, we will miss an awful lot out. One of the most important books out there at the moment was written by Plato, and it's called The Republic. Okay, and it doesn't feature on any bestseller lists. It's been around for a long time. If you put it on the nightly news and you said, Greek guy writes, fascinating book about, political democracy and the arrangement of the state, that would be news for most people, right? It would be news, but it wouldn't be new. It would be news in the sense that it was important, but it would not be new. So the news can't see it. It can't feel it. So we need to be so aware of this because it's so easy to accept the narratives which we're fed. Look, it's also very, very important that Wi-Fi is never installed on aeroplanes because aeroplanes represent one of the few times nowadays when we can be left alone to think for ourselves, to take in the news from ourselves. We are unbelievable generators of important news, right? Which we don't listen. Because we use the news from the Ukraine to stifle the news from within. And the thing about news from within is it's quite wrapped up with anxieties and ambivalence and doubt, but it's the richest source of information. And those who get the news out from themselves are giving humanity real lessons in all sorts of areas. But there have been few people in the history of humanity who've properly picked up on the news from themselves. Part of the reason is to do with prestige. If you say to somebody, somebody says, what are you doing at the moment? And you say, well, I'm reading the news. Oh, fine. Well, that's very serious. Please carry on. Read the news. Somebody says, what are you doing? Well, I'm just sitting on a chair and I'm kind of thinking about when I was about 12 and I remember looking at the sky and sort of wondering about how. And they go, come on, go and do the washing up. Because, that's not serious, right? So the news is unfortunately prestigious. And it often doesn't deserve that prestige because it misses so much. It misses guys like this. There's lots of things going on out there that the news can't pick up. It's not on its frequency. So keep looking out for this and others. Is really kind of if I had to sum up my book, it's kind of what it's about. But look, let me finish with one last thing. I'm a philosopher by training, and philosophers are very, very self-important people who believe they've got the truth in their hands. There's Socrates going to his death, full of the truth. The problem is that no one's listening ever to philosophers. The average work of academic philosophy, a friend of mine told me the other day, sells 300 copies. So 300 copies for the great truths of life. Meanwhile, that website that you don't know about called the Mail Online, every day it gets 40 million people who go and look at it. So you've got 40 million people checking out the Mail Online and 300 people checking out the truth, the eternal verities of philosophy. That's kind of depressing or perplexing. Or what do we do about that? Well, this struck me one insomniac night a few months ago. I thought, what about this? And then I thought, okay, what happens if you got a bunch of philosophers and you got them to rewrite the Mail Online? Okay, so you took exactly the same stories about Miley Cyrus and Taylor Swift and this divorce and murder, etc. And you kept all the same stories, kept all the same pictures, but you simply rewrote it. You got these philosophers to rewrite it with an eye to all the sort of things that philosophers care about: complexity, truth, justice, poetry, all these things. What would that be like? Anyway, we came up with the Philosopher's Mail, the only worldwide news outlet run entirely by philosophers. We have quite a lot of fun doing it. You can go and look at it. It's on the web, philosophersmail.com. We've got some great stories today and every day. I'm not joking. It really exists. Check it out. It's a practical application of many of the ideas that I've been talking to you about today. I'm always a guy who likes to write books and do other things as well, because ultimately what I'm interested in doing is trying to get the world to go a bit better. And we're up against a real challenge with this thing we call news. It really is a big beast, and I think we can get it better. I think that future generations, we're still learning how to handle this stuff, and I'm optimistic, and we've just got to keep our wits about us. Look, I'm going to stop it there. We've got some time for questions, so please come back at me with thoughts and ideas, and thank you so much for listening.